I stood in the corner of the room, holding a glass of melted ice water. The house was full, laughter bounced off the walls, music hummed just under the conversations, but I had never felt more alone. She was at the center of it all, Shirley, my wife, glowing in the golden light like it was made for her. It was her 35th birthday. Everything was perfect. The playlist she'd curated over 2 weeks played softly from the speakers. The cake towered in 3 flawless layers, berries arranged just right. Friends, co-workers, old neighbors, everyone was there. Everyone or biting her like she was the sun. And me? I was the guy refilling empty wine glasses, quietly picking up napkins, making sure the chips didn't run out. The silent husband, no one really noticed, was already there. Shirley looked beautiful. Not just in the way people casually say it. She was radiant. Her laugh rang out, her dress hugged her frame in all the right ways. Her hair curled just so. She clinked glasses with a group of friends from college, smiling like she hadn't smiled in years. She was alive tonight. I used to be the reason behind that smile. I don't know when that changed. Maybe it didn't happen all at once. Maybe I was just too distracted to notice it fading. But now, standing here watching her, really watching her, I knew for certain. I wasn't in her world anymore. And she wasn't doing anything wrong. She hadn't hurt anyone tonight. She was doing what anyone should do on their birthday, celebrating, glowing, being surrounded by joy. The only wrong thing was me, being here, still holding on to something that had quietly slipped out of both our hands. I stepped out to the back porch. The air was cooler than I expected. It smelled like grilled meat and red wine, with a breeze that carried the sound of the party far enough to feel distant. I placed my glass down on the railing and reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a parking stub and a cheap black pen I always carried, an old habit from my days working in logistics. I wrote slowly, each word deliberate, like my heart needed time to catch up with what my hand was doing. I'm not here anymore. Don't look for me. I folded the note and tucked it into the small side pocket of her handbag. She didn't notice. She was in the middle of a story, her eyes gleaming, hands animated. She looked happy, but I wasn't part of that happiness anymore. I turned, opened the back door, and stepped out of the house I once called home. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure if I'd ever come back. It wasn't always like this. There was a time Shirley would run toward me when I walked through the door, hair still damp from the shower, wrapped in one of those oversized sweaters she used to steal from my closet. She'd kiss me like the day had been too long without me. And I, exhausted from work, would melt into it, into her, like coming home wasn't just a place, it was a person. We used to burn pancakes on Sunday mornings because she got distracted telling stories and I couldn't flip worth a damn. We'd laugh until the smoke alarm yelled at us, then fan the room with kitchen towels like 2 kids caught sneaking a cigarette. Those moments were light, easy. They made up the quiet language we spoke without words. I remember the first time she called me her safe place. We were sitting in the car after a long drive back from her parents' place. She hated going there. Her mother had a talent for criticism disguised as affection. That night, after hours of polite smiles and holding back tears, she curled up in the passenger seat, shoes off, knees tucked to her chest, and said, "You're the only thing that makes me feel okay." I didn't know then how heavy that kind of role could become over time. Back then, I wore it like a medal. But medals have weight, and over the years, things got heavier. The job I once loved turned demanding, draining. I started coming home later, missed a couple of dinners, told myself I was doing it for us, for the future. Promotions, savings, stability. That's what I thought mattered. Meanwhile, Shirley got quieter. At first, it was subtle. She stopped texting as much during the day. Her voice over dinner was softer, shorter. We still watched our shows together, still shared a bed, but there was this space, not physical, emotional, like we were standing in the same room but couldn't quite reach each other anymore. I chalked it up to stress, a phase, something we'd get through. But it didn't pass. We stopped touching each other for no reason, stopped asking, "How was your day?" and really listening to the answer. We still laughed, sometimes, still went out with friends, but inside our own walls, we were strangers passing time between obligations. And the worst part? I didn't fight it. I let the silence settle, told myself it was normal, that maybe this is what marriage looks like after a decade, comfort without fire, predictability instead of passion. It didn't feel wrong. It just didn't feel alive. I remember one night in particular. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I was across the room, reading some article I wouldn't remember 10 minutes later. The TV was on, playing some cooking show neither of us liked. And I looked up at her, really looked, and thought, I miss her. And she's right there. But I didn't say anything. And she didn't look up. That's when the cracks began. Not with yelling or slamming doors, but with the things we didn't say. The nights we went to bed back to back. The mornings she left for work without a kiss. The way her smile faded when she didn't think I was watching. And maybe I wasn't. Maybe I got so used to her being there that I stopped noticing she wasn't present anymore. I started assuming things were fine if she wasn't crying, if we weren't fighting, if we were still sleeping in the same bed. But love doesn't die in explosions. It dies in neglect. It withers in silence. It disappears in the space between I'm fine and we need to talk. And I know, now, that I should have talked, that I should have reached across that growing distance and pulled her back in, that I should have asked the hard questions before it was too late. But the truth is, I was tired too. I missed her, but I didn't know how to say it anymore without sounding like I was asking for something she didn't want to give. We'd grown careful, cordial, like business partners with joint assets and matching last names. Still, there were moments, glimpses, like when she fell asleep on the couch and I'd cover her with a blanket without waking her, or the way she'd leave a folded towel on the bathroom counter, just how I liked it. We were still trying, in our own quiet, awkward ways, but it wasn't enough. Not to stop the drift, not to erase the loneliness we didn't have the courage to confess. And then came the late nights. She started working more, staying later at the hospital, said she had patients to chart, meetings that ran over. I believed her at first. Why wouldn't I? But belief doesn't stay blind forever. I remember the day I saw her phone light up with a name I didn't recognize. I wasn't snooping. It was just there. A preview. A message that said, "Today was nice. Same time next week?" She said it was a coworker, a department lunch. I nodded, said okay, and told myself I was overthinking. But my gut wouldn't quiet. That's when I started counting the days. Watching the clock when she said she'd be home by 8, checking the hamper and noticing her wearing perfume again. The good one. The one she used to save for date nights. And maybe the saddest part of it all was that I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just this slow, sinking grief. Like I was watching something beautiful dissolve in real time and couldn't find the strength to stop it. It was a Thursday. I remember that because Thursday had always been Shirley's longest shift at the hospital. She'd leave early, come home late, and fall asleep the moment her head hit the pillow. That week, though, something felt off. I'd been telling myself stories for too long, brushing away instincts, clinging to the idea that distance doesn't always mean deception. But that morning, I didn't go to work. I left early, like usual, coffee in my thermos, jacket zipped up like armor. But instead of heading to the office, I turned left, drove 2 streets over, parked, waited. At exactly 8:03 a.m., Shirley stepped outside. Pale blue scrubs, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked like every other morning, ordinary, routine, safe. But my heart beat like it already knew something I hadn't caught up to. She drove right past the hospital exit. I followed. She didn't speed, didn't glance in the mirror like she was hiding something. Just drove like it was another morning, nothing out of place. But 10 minutes later, she pulled into a small restaurant tucked off Waverly and 10th. One of those trendy brunch places with overpriced coffee and reclaimed wood tables. The kind of spot people don't go to alone on a Thursday at 10:15 a.m. She stepped out, smoothed her blouse, checked her reflection in the side mirror. Then he arrived. The man from the text. The one I'd told myself was a colleague, a harmless lunch companion. He wore a charcoal blazer, casual confidence in every movement. They hugged. Not a quick greeting, not friendly. It lingered, hands placed deliberately, familiarity in the touch. Then she laughed. That laugh. The same laugh I hadn't heard in our house in over a year. I sat frozen, watching them walk inside like they'd done it before, like this was a routine. Their table was by the window, 2 lattes arriving not long after. He leaned in when he spoke. She tucked her hair behind her ear the way she always did when she wanted to be seen. And I saw enough. I didn't remember opening my door. Didn't recall crossing the parking lot. The door chime above the restaurant rang and heads turned. I kept walking. Her eyes met mine mid-sentence. She froze, fork halfway to her mouth, smile dead on her lips. He looked between us, confused at first, then something closer to fear. I didn't look at him again. I looked at her. Brunch date, huh? I said quietly, my voice more knife than question. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The man began to speak, to explain or excuse. I didn't care. I reached across the table, picked up her untouched glass of orange juice, and calmly, deliberately poured it into his lap. The entire restaurant went silent. She gasped, reached for me. Larry, please. Can we talk? I didn't answer, just turned and walked out. The sun outside was too bright. My hands shook, not from adrenaline, but from something deeper. Something finally snapping after being stretched too thin for too long. I didn't go home. I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just away. From that table, from her laughter, from the version of me that had stayed too long, hoping love would be enough. Because it wasn't the man that broke me. It wasn't even the hug or the hidden brunches. It was the way she looked happy, free. Like I'd been the weight she'd finally shrugged off. I drove for hours that day. No destination, no GPS. Just the winding roads of a town I knew by muscle memory, letting turns choose themselves while my mind unraveled. I didn't blast music. I didn't call anyone. I didn't scream. What I felt didn't need noise. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't cry. It burns. And right then, I was fire from the inside out. I replayed everything. Her laughter, the way her eyes lit up across from him, the practiced way she'd smoothed her blouse and checked her lipstick like it was a routine. Not a mistake, not a slip, but something she'd chosen, and I'd seen enough to know. It wasn't just about the man. It was about how easily she had lived that second life. How lightly she stepped back into ours like nothing cracked. I could have gone home, packed a bag, waited for her to show up, wide-eyed and panicked, asking to explain. But I didn't want explanations. I wanted stillness. So I drove to the only place I ever found it. The cemetery sat on a hill just outside town. Not many people went there anymore. Old graves, mostly forgotten ones. But I hadn't forgotten. Not this one. I parked under the shade of a leaning maple tree that never shed its leaves evenly. Walked the last few yards like I'd done too many times before. The grass had grown tall since my last visit. I didn't mind. There it was. Dean Carter, 1985 to 2020. Leave it better than you found it. He was my best friend, since 6th grade, the kind of person who told the truth even when it stung, who knew how to say, "You're being an idiot," and still make it sound like love. Cancer took him in 5 months, quick and cruel. I sat down in the grass like we were back in high school, sneaking beers behind the bleachers after football games, and for a long while, I didn't say anything. I just let the wind push dry leaves around us, let the silence settle into the spaces where words couldn't reach. Then finally, I laughed, bitter, low. You'd punch me in the arm for how I handled today. I leaned back, hands brushing the cool stone. Caught her, man, laughing, with him, like I wasn't even part of the story anymore. My voice broke a little. I don't know if it hurts more that she did it, or that I wasn't enough to stop her. There was no answer. Of course. But saying it out loud chipped something loose. It wasn't just about Shirley, or him. It was about the slow erosion of something I didn't protect, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't notice until it was already halfway gone. She used to laugh like that with me, I said. Now it sounds like it belongs to someone else. The wind shifted again, lifting a corner of the leaves in slow, lazy spirals. Dean, I miss when things were simpler, when love was stupid and loud and obvious, when we didn't have to dig through years of silence just to find each other again. I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve. I hadn't even realized I was crying. You remember what you used to say? That real love ain't clean, that it's messy and stupid and honest. I never really got it until now. And maybe I still didn't. But what I did understand, finally, was that I couldn't stay in something just because I remembered how it used to feel. I couldn't keep fighting for a version of us that only existed in memory. For the first time since the restaurant, the fire in my chest dulled. The rage burned out somewhere between her smile and the silence of this hill. All I had left was the ache. And strangely, it felt clearer than anything had in weeks. I whispered the only thing I knew for sure. I miss you, man. The sun had started to dip, casting everything in that late amber glow that made even the headstones look peaceful. I sat there until the sky turned violet and the wind carried that soft chill that tells you it's time to go. When I stood up, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, just no longer burning. I didn't go home angry that night. I went home tired, hollow, quiet in a way I didn't even recognize in myself. But beneath the weariness was something else, something beginning to take shape, a choice. I could return and burn it all down, demand answers, deliver ultimatums, or I could wait, not for her, for myself, to see if what remained between us was still real, still worth saving, or just a ghost with our names. That night, when I walked through the front door, the house was dark. Too dark. She hadn't turned on the porch light. Her bag was on the counter. Her phone was face down on the table. She stepped out of the kitchen when she heard me. Her eyes were red, shoulders slumped. She looked like someone who had been pacing for hours, waiting for something she wasn't sure would come. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, because talking wasn't the hard part. Listening was. We sat at the dining table, the one we bought in year 3 of our marriage. Its surface was scarred with time, a candle wax stain near her side, a small scratch from the night I tried to build a chair and failed. It was strangely the most honest piece of furniture in the house. Shirley sat first. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of everything had folded her in on herself. Her makeup was faded, her hair loose now. She didn't speak right away. Neither did I. When she finally did, her voice barely cleared her throat. "I messed up," she said. No defense, no excuses, just those 3 words. I didn't nod, didn't offer anything. She blinked fast, trying to keep her eyes from breaking. "It wasn't what you think," she said. "I mean, yes, I saw him, more than once, and yes, I lied. But I didn't sleep with him." I looked at her. Not like someone hunting for weakness, but like a man trying to see if there was anything still real beneath all the dust. "What was it then?" I asked. "What did he give you that I didn't?" She closed her eyes for a long second. When she opened them, her voice cracked. "Attention. That's it. He noticed me, talked to me like I mattered, like I wasn't just background noise." I stayed quiet. My heartbeat was steady, but my chest still felt hollow. "It wasn't about him," she whispered. "It was never about him. I didn't even like the version of myself around him. But for a few hours, I felt seen, and I didn't want to let that go." There was a long pause. I didn't move. She didn't cry, not fully, but her voice wavered with every word. "I hate myself for it," she said. "Because when I saw your face in that restaurant, I knew. I'd just broken the only person who's ever stayed." I swallowed hard. "I didn't come back to forgive you," I said slowly. "And I'm not here to say I'm staying." She nodded, tears slipping down now, silently. "But I needed to hear it from you. All of it." She reached across the table, hand hovering, not quite touching mine. "I don't know how to fix this," she said. "But if you let me try, I will. I'll do whatever it takes." For the first time in weeks, I didn't see a liar in front of me. I saw someone unraveling, still broken, but maybe finally honest. I didn't take her hand, but I didn't walk away either. We never planned to go to therapy. For most of our marriage, we believed in fixing things ourselves. If something felt wrong, we stayed quiet, pushed it down, and moved on. That was how we were raised. You didn't tell strangers your problems, you just kept going. But this time, we couldn't just keep going. Too much had broken. So, we sat on a couch in a quiet room that smelled like lavender. Across from us was a woman with a kind face and a calm voice. She asked simple questions, but they didn't feel simple when we tried to answer them. "When did it start to feel like something was missing?" she asked. Shirley was the first to speak. "I think I started feeling alone a long time ago," she said. "Not all at once. Just little by little, like I was fading in our own home." Her voice was low and careful. She wasn't angry. She sounded sad. I looked at her. Really looked. And for once, I didn't feel defensive. I just listened. "I didn't want you to worry," I told her. "So I kept things to myself. I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I was just shutting you out." The therapist nodded and said something I won't forget. When people stop talking, they don't stop feeling. The distance just grows quietly. And that was us. We hadn't screamed at each other. We hadn't thrown things or cursed. We had simply stopped reaching. Therapy wasn't easy. Some weeks, we left in silence. Some weeks, we cried. But we always came back. Shirley showed up. That mattered more than anything. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't make big promises. She just kept showing me that she was here. And slowly, I began to trust that again. One night, we went to a small party with some old friends. Good people, safe place, nothing fancy. Shirley wore that green dress I hadn't seen in over a year. It still looked perfect on her. She laughed, moved through the room with ease. For a while, I watched from across the room. Then I heard it. That laugh. The same one I'd heard in the cafe. Except now, it wasn't secret. It wasn't for someone else. It was real, and it was mine to witness. And it hurt. Not because she laughed, but because it reminded me of how far we had fallen, of how long it had been since I'd made her laugh that way. I stepped outside to get some air. After a moment, she followed. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I heard you laugh," I said. She didn't say sorry. She didn't try to explain. She just stood there beside me and nodded. "I want us to be honest again," she said. "Even when it hurts. I don't want to hide anymore. And I don't want you to either." She reached for my hand, slowly. And this time, I didn't pull away. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a fresh start. But it was something. And sometimes, that's enough to keep going. Healing looks ordinary from the outside. You still take out the trash, still make coffee, still forget your wallet and find it between the couch cushions. The world keeps spinning. But inside, something is different. Quieter, warmer. We were getting better. We weren't in love the way we used to be, but we were learning how to love again. Slowly. Carefully. Shirley started leaving little notes again. Small things like, "Coffee's strong today like you," or, "Don't forget you matter." I found them in my lunch bag, my coat pocket, once even taped to the bathroom mirror. She wasn't trying to win me back with grand gestures. She was showing up every single day. And I, for the first time in a long time, had stopped checking her phone. Not because I forgot what happened, but because I couldn't live my whole life guarding against what might never return. Trust wasn't fully restored, but the door to it had opened, and she kept gently pushing it wider. Then came the night of the party. It was louder than we expected. Friends from work, neighbors, laughter bouncing off kitchen tiles. Shirley wore the green dress again. She curled her hair the way she used to. She looked happy, the kind of happy I hadn't seen in years. And this time, I didn't feel like a stranger in the room. She smiled at me from across the table, and I smiled back. For a moment, I believed. I truly did. That we'd made it through the fire. That what we'd rebuilt might hold. Then her phone lit up. She was across the room, chatting with 2 other women near the bookshelf. I was at the bar, talking about mortgage rates with someone I barely knew. But my eyes drifted at the wrong, or maybe right, moment. A message preview glowed on her screen. "Hey, you okay? I haven't heard from you since Tuesday. Graham." I didn't move right away. I just stared at the name. Since Tuesday. Not last month, not last year, just days ago. And in that one line, everything I had begun to rebuild inside me cracked again. I didn't shout, didn't make a scene. Instead, I reached for a pen, found a cocktail napkin near the bar, wrote the words carefully, steady, without anger, without drama. I wanted to believe, but belief isn't blind. Then I walked across the room. She looked up as I reached her. Her smile faded the moment she saw my face. I handed her the napkin. She read it, and in 1 second, I saw her chest collapse inward, like the air had been knocked out of her. I didn't say a word. I turned and walked out. The night air was cool when I stepped outside. Not sharp, not bitter, just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask you to think or feel, just to breathe. Behind me, the music kept playing. Laughter still spilled from the house. Life went on, as it always does. I walked toward my truck, keys in hand, heart heavy, but no longer broken. Not in the way it had been before. This time, I wasn't leaving in rage. I wasn't leaving to make a point. I was leaving because I finally knew I could. Inside that house, there was a woman I had loved deeply. A woman I had fought for, cried for, forgiven once, almost twice. But belief, real belief, needs something more than apologies. It needs trust, and hers had worn thin. That message wasn't proof of another affair. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe she hadn't answered him in days. But it didn't matter, because I shouldn't have had to wonder. That's what broke me. Not the man, not the laugh, not even the lie. It was the weight of never fully being safe again in someone's arms, of loving someone with both eyes open and still seeing shadows in the corners. So I drove. No destination. No plan. Just the hum of the road beneath me and the sound of my own breath. Steady now. I passed the gas station where we used to stop for coffee before long trips, the bookstore where we spent our first anniversary. I didn't stop, not because I was running away from memories, but because I was ready to stop living in them. Eventually, the road narrowed into silence, and I pulled over near an overlook I hadn't visited since I was a kid. The city glowed in the distance, far enough to look peaceful, small. I got out, leaned on the hood of the truck, and let the wind hit my face. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was unraveling. I felt free, not healed, not whole, but finally, still. I thought about Shirley, about the good years, the way she used to fall asleep mid-conversation, the way she'd write her S with a little loop at the top, like a musical note, the way her fingers always smelled faintly of lemon when she cooked. I didn't hate her, not even close. But love, when stretched too far, becomes something else. I had held on long enough to know when it was time to let go. Leaving wasn't failure. It wasn't weakness. It was clarity. It was me, choosing myself for once. Not the version of me that tried to keep the peace, to patch holes, to carry both sides of the relationship on my back, but the me that wanted more. More honesty, more calm, more truth. The stars came out slow that night. No music, no words, just sky and silence. And when I got back into my truck, I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder if she had texted. I didn't look in the rearview mirror, because I wasn't going back. And for the first time in a long, long time, that felt like home.